Good day, and total patient service. Thanks and welcome to our webinar today, Stop Cancellations, No Shows, Late Shows, and Other Scheduling Disruptions. So excited to be with you today, and I'm going to give you just a couple of heads up here if this is the first time that you've been with us. You're in listen only mode. That means that you should be able to hear me. We cannot hear you. We're going to have a time for questions and answers, so you're welcome in the question bar in your control panel. There's a place where you can type in questions, and after the formal presentation, we'll take those questions first come, first serve as time allows. So this webinar today, let me give you just a quick introduction of all the players. This webinar today is brought to you by the Crown Council, Total Patient Service, and Weave. So you may have come from a couple of different directions here, so let me just give you a little bit of background. The Crown Council is an international affiliation of practices that are dedicated to creating a culture of success in your practice. Those practices span all over the country, all over the United States, all over the world, and is filled with resources to help practices create the right kind of culture in which patients get treated well and team members love to work. We like to refer to the Crown Council as hygiene for your practice culture. So it's where your entire team stays up to date on things that make your practice a great place for patients to visit. The Total Patient Service Institute is an education and practice management organization that works every day to help practices re-engineer their systems to be more patient-centric and improve their case acceptance. We kind of consider total patient service to be like the restorative side of your practice, where we go in and restore it to healthy systems to operate at its very best. And then, as I mentioned, Crown Council is kind of like the hygiene department, where you maintain that and continue to build a culture of success. I'm excited today to be co-hosting this webinar with Mike Buckner from Weave. I've been affiliated and known Weave for many, many years. And Mike is going to lend some expertise today on the technology side in how you communicate properly with your patients, not only over the phone, but also in text and email. So Mike, welcome. Thanks for your contribution today.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Why don't you just give us a quick brief overview of what Weave is and what Weave does for those that might be new to what you do.
Absolutely. So Weave is, as many of you have probably heard of Weave, they are known for their phone system. It basically is the first system that has been created especially for the dental practice that syncs with the practice management software. So that when a patient calls the practice, before you even pick up the phone, you know who's calling and you know what items you need to address. So just like you see here, as you see on the bottom right-hand side, you see that incoming call. So before I pick up the phone, I know that Mike Buckner is calling. And then the system actually will prioritize the things that need to be discussed on that phone call with the patient. So as a front office manager picks up the phone, you know right off the bat. For example, let's make this personal. So, hey, Mike, I know your birthday's coming up. Happy birthday. Wanted to remind you of your appointment coming up, as well as the appointment we have for your daughter for the crown that she has coming up on, on whatever date. And so we know that the time that a front office manager or a team member has with your patients, that face-to-face is probably very limited, especially if you're a front office manager. You might only have 5 minutes of FaceTime with a patient over the course of a year because those conversations are very limited. And so to maximize the time with your patients, we have all that information up here in front of you. The other information that you'll be able to see as you continue on is you can see how much they owe. You can see what other family members are due for appointments. And so that is kind of the basics of what Weave is known for, along with the automated confirmations and two-way texting and reminders.
Perfect. All right, thanks for the introduction, Mike. Hopefully that gets everybody on the same page so you understand exactly what the context from which Mike is coming today. So last thing that I'll mention is our affiliation with the Smiles for Life Foundation, which is a big part of what we do at the Crown Council and Total Patient Service. So Smiles for Life is the largest charity campaign in dentistry, having raised over $40 million for children's charities around the world. And Weave, as part of a strategic relationship and also a resource partner of the Crown Council, is also a big supporter of Smiles for Life. And those of you that are involved with Weave, stay tuned in the weeks to come for an exciting announcement about a Weave Smiles for Life event coming up. So with that, let's talk about cancellations. And we're going to cover a lot of ground in the next few minutes. If you have pen and paper handy, which I highly recommend, you are going to be taking notes viciously here because there is a lot of content. I will give you this comfort that will give you some resources here at the end where you'll have access to all of today's content in several different formats so that you can share that with your team because this is going to be a team effort. Every single member of the team will be involved in our discussion today. So if you're listening alone or there's just a handful of team members, we'll give you some resources so you can share this with your entire team. As well as if you are listening as a team, we'll give you some follow-up resources that will help you implement the comprehensive system that we'll talk about today. So here we go. For starters, we're going to talk about a natural law, and those of you that have been with me before know my love for natural laws, understanding what is really at the foundation of what makes things work. And so this first natural law is what we all are familiar with, the law of the harvest. And the law of the harvest says, as you know, as you sow, you reap. So there is going to be a piece of this, which is if you want great behavior from your patients, you have to exhibit great behavior yourself. How you treat them is how in turn they're going to treat you. And so keep that in mind as we talk about all of the various systems that you're going to put in place here. So first agenda item is to develop the 4 characteristics of what we call the R factor, or the relationship factor. Dentistry is a relationship business, and Mike's going to talk about how you can build that relationship digitally here in just a minute. 4 characteristics of the R factor. The more relationship you have with your patients, then the more of the right kind of behavior that you'll get in return. So here's 4 things to consider as you build that R factor. Number 1, be on time. Time is today the most valuable resource that consumers have, even more than their money. Just a quick example of this, back 30 or 40 years ago, we used to spend our time to save money. We'd cook our own food, do our own yard, do our own laundry. There are a lot of things we did ourselves, which we still do to some degree. And when you look at the services that are available today, more often than not, we invest our money to save time. You take your car to the mechanic or the oil and lube center to have your oil changed because they can do it faster and less expensive than you can. In fact, you won't even go to the grocery store and buy a head of lettuce anymore. You have to buy it in a bag already shredded and washed for you. We invest our money to save time. So people are very conscious of their time. That doesn't mean you're always going to run on time, but you respect your patient's time and you acknowledge that. We'll talk about that. You manage their time expectations. Number 2, do what you say you'll do. So, for example, if you scheduled an appointment, then the discipline and the practice would be to do everything you can to keep that schedule as originally planned. The more you start moving patients around to accommodate your changes, then that sends a message that that time is not as important or as sacred as you originally scheduled it. Number 3, be nice. Say please, say thank you, use common courtesy. Again, how you treat them is how you will be treated in return. And number 4, follow through. Follow through is different than doing what you say you'll do. It's a part of it, but following through is going the extra mile, doing the unexpected. Mike will show you here in just a few minutes how you can use digital tools to follow through and build the R factor. One simple thing that everybody knows that they should do is contact your patients after they've been in the practice for any kind of significant procedure to check on them and let them know that you're available and that you're concerned about them. Well, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. That's just one way to follow through. So those are 4 suggestions in terms of the R factor. Now, here's a question. Which professional in your town has no problems with cancellations? I want you to think about that for just a minute. Who in your town does not have a problem with cancellations? Now, if you said the mortician, you would be right. I don't think they have a problem with cancellations. If you thought first off with your local hairdresser, you would be spot on. What happens, ladies, if you cancel or no show for your hair appointment? That's right, they make you pay, not in money, but in pain and suffering. When you try and reschedule that appointment that you no showed for or canceled at the last minute, they'll probably say something like, I'm so sorry, Mrs. Jones, let me see. It looks like we can see you in about 6 weeks to get your graying roots bleached, right? So they have developed a great way of making sure that people stay on track. Now, I realize that the dynamics in that business might be a little bit different in dentistry, and there are some things that can be learned from what they do. So here's the first rule, is that your patients do not come trained. In other words, you can't expect your patients anymore to respect your time. Based on their previous experience, that is how they will naturally act. So most people bring their medical experience to the dental office because it's healthcare. And if they're like most people, their time has been very abused in medicine. So they don't come trained. You have to have a process by which you train your patients so they know what behavior is expected in your practice. So here's a reminder that you teach people how to treat you. So this is kind of our motto in this whole methodology, is we teach people how to treat us. We don't leave it up to them. We very subtly, with how we treat them, let them know how we expect them to treat us. So people are people, regardless of everything that we'll talk about today. As long as there's people involved, there will always be exceptions. Always be exceptions. So keep that in mind. There's no 100% rule. The specific techniques we'll talk about today will increase your averages. And there will always be exceptions. This is one of my favorite cartoons on the topic. It's actually dental specific, about the patient who tries to call and cancel and the verbal skills involved. So calling to remind them of their appointment, and the patient says, "Oh, I can't make it," and they're asked why. And the patient says, "Profanity, it offends me and it's unprofessional." And the appointment coordinator says, "Well, I didn't use profanity." And the patient says, "Well, my car won't start." And the appointment coordinator says, "Well, you only live a block away." And the patient says, "Well, I have 2 broken feet." And they said, "Well, we'll send a cab. I can't afford it. We'll pay for it. Your mom died. You said that last year," and so forth and so forth and so forth. And I know sometimes it feels like you're dealing with patients that are trying to give you every excuse why they can't show up. So again, we're going to talk about some ways where we can prevent this kind of behavior. So who's at risk? Who are the patients that are at the greatest risk of no showing or canceling? There's 3 categories. New patients. They're at risk because they're anonymous. You've never met them, they've never met you. If they don't show up, if they run into you at the grocery store, you won't be able to recognize them. So there is some risk there with new patients. Next is hygiene patients. The attitude with many hygiene patients is, well, it's just a cleaning. Well, what we know about periodontal disease today is that it's not just a cleaning anymore. And there's a whole set of verbal skills that can be used just in hygiene to help people understand the importance of staying on track with their regular hygiene appointments. It is now, today, what we know, it is one of the most important health maintenance activities that anyone can engage in. And finally, the financial flu patients. Now, these are the patients that call the day of, and they tell you that they're sick. Many times the reason that they're quote unquote sick is because they got a little bit of indigestion when they realized how much money they're going to have to pay that day. And we'll talk about how to prevent that, actually eliminate that as a reason for canceling or no showing. We're going to talk about two areas. One, prevention. How do you prevent scheduling changes, cancellations, and no-shows? And then we'll talk about first aid. After all you've done to prevent it, for those where there's an exception, what you do in the heat of the moment that will make a difference and try and save the appointment. So, prevention, here we go. First off, a reminder, this is a team effort. We will talk about the involvement of every member in the team, on the team, in just the next few minutes. The doctor, all of front office team, assistants, hygienists, financial coordinator, scheduling, every member of the team has a piece in running a well-managed schedule. So if you happen to be the appointment coordinator and you're the only one watching this webinar today, then your challenge is to take this back to the team because there is a part to play for every member of the team. So here's the first, next rule is patients place as much importance on their appointment as you do. This is what we call the law of importance. They will place as much importance and urgency on their appointment and on their treatment as you do. No big deal to you, no big deal to them. So the more importance and value you place on that appointment, then you have at least some comfort and assurance of knowing that they will place more urgency and importance as you do. So how you treat their appointment time is absolutely critical. Here's a suggestion, is to keep score. We tend to pay attention when there's a score. And so our recommendation is on a daily basis, you actually keep track of how many cancellations and no-shows you have. So we classify a cancellation as anyone who cancels within 24 hours of their scheduled appointment, or anyone who cancels and does not reschedule, and or no-shows for their appointment. So just keep score. And one of the ratios that I love to look at is the ratio of cancellations and no-shows to new patients. So how many new patients did you see this month versus how many cancellations did you get? And it's a very interesting contrast to look at those two things. The more you can keep the schedule intact, then the better off everyone will be. So keep score so that you understand exactly what's going on from a scheduling standpoint. Action number one, now that we've given you a couple of strategic and philosophical ideas, we're going to talk about new patients. And what I'm going to share with you is the number one guaranteed new patient always will show up formula. 100%. 100% of the time, if you do this, all of your new patients will show up for their scheduled appointment. The doctor is going to call all of the new patients. So preferably 24 hours or so before their scheduled appointment, the day before, the doctor would call all the new patients and welcome them to the practice. More often than not, they'll leave a message, but simply just say, this is, in fact, here's the message right here, is the format here is one way to do it. Mike's here in a moment going to show you another way to do it. Print tomorrow's schedule, highlight the new patients, hand that to the doctor in the morning meeting, and then the doctor will report back in the next meeting. The dialogue is very simple. If you're leaving a message, it would be simply to say, if I were the doctor, I'd say, Mrs. Jones, this is Dr. Steve Anderson, and I'm looking forward to meeting you during your appointment tomorrow at 3 p.m. in our office. And I want to let you know that we'll have everything set up and ready to go for you. If there's anything that would be helpful for me to know before you come in, it would make your visit more comfortable, please give us a call. Here's our office phone number Otherwise, we look forward to meeting you tomorrow at 3 o'clock. We'll see you then. Now, here's the impact. A patient who hears that message, what's their reaction going to be? What's the underlying message? Well, the underlying message is the doctor knows where you live. In other words, you're not anonymous. You're not just some random patient, some number or some name. We know who you are, we care about you, and we are preparing for your arrival. In other words, you matter. So we have tested this. We know that it works. It's getting out of your comfort zone just a little bit, but it sends a huge message. In fact, it is a huge wow when patients hear this kind of message or when they get this call. Now, Mike's going to share with you what he calls the 5-minute plan. And this has to do with new patients as well as how you can digitally communicate post-op to follow up. So Mike, share with us how you can take the same concept and do it digitally.
Absolutely. So I completely agree as well that very important to reach out to all your new patients. As I've been talking with dentists, there used to be this perception that you could automate your patient relationships. And I think that more and more, it's kind of like, it used to be we would get a birthday message, and you get an automated message from your dentist that says, hey, happy birthday, and you felt really special. Well, after that becomes the norm. I mean, now I get like 5 or 6 different birthday messages from car dealerships and everywhere else. It's almost like a magic trick that you know how it's done. Kind of the wow factor is gone. So when I talk to dentists about how they go about really improving their patient retention, they talk a lot about exactly what you've talked about, how it's important to reach out to all of your new patients, even going above and beyond and reaching out to patients who have maybe just completed a large case or treatment that day or are coming in the following day. So if you're trying to call your patients during your business hours, like you said, there's a good chance you're probably just going to leave a voice message. Now, if you wanted to try something else, if you're like me, I probably, Steve, as I look at my phone, I probably have about 74 unlistened to voice messages. Why? Just like you said, time is everything. And I know that it's quicker for me just to get on the phone to call those individuals back. However, the text messages, all of my text messages are caught up. And so Weave offers an ability for you to have your schedule on your phone. And when I talk to doctors too, and I say, okay, well, if you're calling all of your patients, are you doing this during the normal business hours? Because what happens when you go home? And I've talked to a lot who say, you know what, I will call them from my cell phone, even if I'm at home, just to kind of touch base with my new patients coming in the next day. And as you can imagine, the problem that you've got there is now you've got hundreds of people who have your personal cell phone number, and it might prove a little difficult as people start calling you on your personal line. And so what Weave has the ability to, on the app, you have your schedule. You can see all your patients, you can jump to whatever day you want. And when you click on that, I want you just to go to the next slide. If you click on one of these schedule blocks here, what you're actually going to see is you're going to see who that patient is. You're going to see if they've confirmed, and you have the option. You see those 3 little blue circles. You have the option to either look at more detail into that patient's file. You can call the patient, or right there in the middle, you can click to send a text message to that patient. Now, if I click on that to send a text message, and if you just want to advance that slide, you can send an automated text message, or you can send a personalized text message to the patient. And I'll tell you that this goes a long way to get something personalized, if it's from the dentist, to even say, hey, Mike, thank you for choosing me to be your dentist. We're happy to have you in, or you're going to love your smile that we've, your restoration we're going to do for you tomorrow, or even checking in on the crown that they did that day. By personalizing something like this, and when the patient gets this looks like it comes from the office phone. So you're no longer having to give out your personal information. And there's something to be said about, personalized communication. When we know that somebody has taken the time to type out a message or to really tailor something towards us, just like it is when you get that voice message from the dentist. That goes a long way. And that really shows the patient that, wow, this doctor, he really cares. And I'm not just another automated message.
Perfect. So Mike, thanks for sharing that with me. This gives you the ability to call, text, email, correct? You can use
Yep.
any form of communication, which is great.
And
I now know I will never leave you another voice message again.
and any phone calls as well. If you wanted to call your patients, let's say you're on the beach in Mexico and you're not going to be back in time for the appointment tomorrow, you can call your patient from that app, and it will look like it comes from the office phone number.
Perfect. You shared, I heard you share at a presentation at the Dental Digital Marketing Conference recently that the statistics are that something like 97% of text messages get opened within 3 minutes of delivery, something like
Yes.
that. I'm sure those numbers change from time to time, but and so I appreciate you sharing this with us. The key here is the principles, the core principles don't change. The delivery mechanisms may change. There's a lot of different ways you can communicate, different channels that you can communicate with your patients today: phone, text, email, mail, and we're going to talk about all of those. The fundamental principles, however, do not change in terms of verbal skills and that it's about the relationship. So whether you communicate digitally or verbally, in print, how you communicate and what you say becomes critically important because it influences their behavior. Moving on, let's talk about the doctor chairside conversation with a patient who is going to move ahead with restorative treatment. Again, everybody has a part to play in this entire system. So if the patient has agreed to move forward with treatment, even if they have not scheduled yet or the financial arrangements have not been ironed out, but they have said, yes, I want to move forward and we need to work out the finances and the schedule, then the doctor conversation would go like this. I would say, Mike, if you're the patient, I'd say, Mike, we want to do everything we can to help you get the outcome that you want, that we've talked about today. And so I want you to know that we are totally committed to helping you move through the treatment that we've talked about today in a timely and a comfortable way. In order to do that, I need your help. By the way, those are 4 of the most powerful words I know. I need your help. Those ought to be part of your regular vernacular with your patients. It's very difficult to turn down someone who is asking you for their help. So, Mike, I need your help. In order to help you get everything you want, we need to make sure that your appointments are set at times when you have the least likelihood of any type of a delay or interruption in your schedule, so that nothing stands in the way of doing what we've talked about today. Does that make sense? So the doctor, from the doctor's lips, is in a very courteous, professional way saying, when we schedule this, it's important time. You're important to us, and we want to make sure that nothing stands in the way of moving forward. So that message from the one who has all the initials behind his or her name makes an impact on behavior. So with that, that's a suggested dialogue for the dentist. Now, I've got a lot more verbal skills that we're going to talk about today, and it's a lot. And so I will give you a resource here before we get done of how you can get all of these specific verbal skills so that you'll have them in front of you in print. I'm not a big believer in scripts because you can tell when somebody is scripted. I am a believer from time to time in borrowing someone else's words and making them your own so that you get the result that you want. So somewhere in between being scripted and doing nothing at all, there's a happy medium where you can say the right thing and come across so that it's genuine and from your heart. So that doctor conversation is critical. The last piece of that is what we call the relationship link, is to say, so Mike, if you'll work with Susie, our appointment coordinator, we will both be committed to the same schedule that the 2 of you put together to make sure that everything happens as planned. So you're linking that up with your appointment coordinator just to remind the patient we're all on the same team. She's going to schedule the appointment with you, and that's our commitment to you. So That's, again, two things for the doctor to do: call new patients, as well as the chairside conversation with patients that schedule and are ready to move forward with restorative work. Again, you're training your patients how to treat you and underlining the fact that that appointment time is very, very important. Let's jump over to the hygiene room. We talked about hygienists as being one of the high risk, hygiene patients being high risk, because the attitude of many patients is it's just a cleaning. So at the conclusion of every hygiene appointment, here is the hygiene conversation. I would say to you, Mike, I'd say, congratulations, Mike. You're doing a great job of taking care of the great work that Dr. Anderson did. Or I might say, Mike, here's what we found today, and here's what needs to be done at home so that we can keep things healthy and moving forward in the right direction. So the best insurance policy you have to stay on track is to do your home care every day and make sure that nothing stands in the way of our regularly scheduled appointments. Okay, so you're placing some emphasis on these regularly scheduled appointments. Okay, so, and you might even add why, because that gives us an opportunity to get in and clean those areas that are more difficult to clean. We also clean at home, and we also know that bacteria recolonizes every 90 days if they happen to be on 4910. So that gives you the peace of mind of knowing you're doing everything that you can to stay healthy. Okay, so continuing on, I would say, so Mike, I want you to know that when we have an appointment scheduled together, I have that time reserved especially for you. I work very hard to make sure nothing gets in the way of that. So if I could make a suggestion, do for yourself what we're doing for you here in the office. Do for yourself what we're doing for you here in the office. Make sure to put that appointment time on your calendar. That way, if a potential conflict comes up, you can tell them that you have a prior commitment. And that commitment, Mike, is to your best health. Does that make sense? So what's going on here is we're doing what we call priming, which is I'm setting Mike up and having him think forward to think of himself, if something comes up that infringes on this time, here's what I'm going to say. Here's how I'm going to act, because this is important for me and my health. So again, we're training people how to treat us, how to respond. We're saying to them, you block this time out just like we block it out for you. This is a high priority for your health and your future. So we've talked a little bit about the relationship link going from one team member to the next. My preference is to schedule chairside if at all possible, but if there is any involvement now from another team member, you want a continuous link with the patient and the next team member in the relationship chain. So you're going to review all of that information with the next team member so that everything and everybody is on the same page. You're going to communicate the planned and agreed upon treatment. So you're not just going to go, okay, well, here's your treatment and Betty will take care of you. No, you're going to review it with the appointment coordinator standing right there so that everybody hears it again. You're going to re-communicate what we call the patient's M&M, what matters most to them. So it's not just the treatment, but why that treatment is important to the patient, which if you have followed all the things that we teach at Total Patient Service, you will have discovered and discussed with the patient. So you're going to review that with them, not just what they're going to do, but why it's important to them. And then you're also going to communicate any patient concerns or potential obstacles with the next team member to say, Steve has a very busy schedule. He travels a lot. Mondays and Tuesdays are usually better for him. So if we can schedule appointments on Mondays and Tuesdays, that'll sure help him with consistency and making sure this gets done on a timely basis. And then you'll ask the patient, is there anything that I missed that we need to discuss about the treatment or the treatment plan before Susie helps you with the financial arrangements and the scheduling? In other words, I'm trying to separate the clinical discussion from the scheduling and the financial arrangements discussion. so that the patient understands that we are moving now to another discussion. What I'm trying to prevent here is patients having a clinical discussion with the business team. While they're very equipped to do that, it's a big use of time that we would prefer be handled in the clinical area with the clinical team, and it saves them a tremendous amount of time so that they can focus on financials and scheduling. So let's talk about scheduling, which is the next step. How you schedule it may determine whether they show up or not. So one of the things that you'll ask the patient, you'll say to them is, you'd say, so Mike, let me ask you, which day of the week do you have the most control over, where you have the least likelihood of any type of an interruption in your schedule when we can schedule this next appointment? Okay, now that's a lot of words, but the message is control, no interruptions. In other words, when we schedule this, we're making a commitment, you're making a commitment, and we expect you to follow through on that commitment. Okay, so that's how we like to open the scheduling conversation. Next suggestion is to hand the appointment card to the patient. Now, in the age of digital everything, and I totally get that, it's still a good idea to have that appointment time in writing and let it be in the patient's writing. So while you're trying to figure that out, you could hand them the appointment card and say, Mike, here's an appointment card so you can write down date and time, and hand them a pen. So as you explore different options, then you can let them write it down. The psychology is here that things we write down in our own handwriting, we tend to place more importance on those things than things that are written by someone else. So allow your patients to write it down in their own handwriting. It's a small thing, and it's one more piece of the overall equation. Now, let's talk about the messaging, excuse me, the messaging that is on your appointment card. Many times I see messages on the appointment card that says, if a conflict arises, please let us know 48 hours in advance of your scheduled appointment. In other words, it has really a cancellations invitation on that card, which basically communicates, as long as you tell us far enough in advance, you can mix and match and change anytime you want. Instead of that, we recommend that you customize the messaging on your appointment cards to say, please mark this important appointment on your calendar today. We look forward to seeing you at this time that has been reserved, especially for you. So the message is, we've made a commitment, you've made a commitment, we made a reservation, we expect you to see you then. So that's just a suggestion. Most places where you get appointment cards printed today, you can customize everything. And so we suggest you take personal responsibility for that, and you customize the messaging so that it reinforces the behavior that you want. The next question to ask, especially new patients, is which method of communication do they prefer? So I would say, Mike, periodically we may be communicating with you between appointments. Which method of communication do you prefer? Do you pay most attention to? Does the phone or phone message work best for you, a text or an email? Which one do you prefer? Now, based on what Mike just shared with us, he's a text guy. So he would probably say, text messages are usually my preferred method of communication. So I'm going to get that selection. And then I would say, Mike, as a courtesy, we may periodically between appointments be sending you some messages to stay in contact. Will that work for you? Now, this one, I'd like you to pay particular attention to this wording, and we'll talk about this again. I have not said, Mike, we're going to send you a message to remind you about your appointment. I haven't said we're going to message you to confirm your appointment. No, I just said, Mike, as a courtesy, we send you periodic messages between appointments or before your next appointment. Will that work for you? So you're letting them know, you're getting their permission to text or email them to stay in communication with them. You want to make a note of their preferred method of communication so that you can communicate with them the way they prefer. So we love to ask this question so that we know what their preference is. So Mike, you're going to talk to us now about some functionality. So here's some examples of some messages that go through Weave digitally. So let me flip back here and share with us a little bit about the functionality here.
Absolutely. I love this saying right here because this really rings true for myself. I know that for years growing up, I went to a dentist that was actually I was related to. And all it took was one time, as soon as I moved out of the house, all it took was one time of forgetting or missing my appointment. And then I felt, oh my gosh, I felt horrible. I was embarrassed to go back. But the thing is I never heard anything back. I never heard an invitation. Nobody called me to try to reschedule. And I kind of got to feeling like, well, maybe it doesn't matter. And so I chose to go somewhere else. And this saying, I don't think could be more true than for a dental practice, that nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So in today's day and age of how we're drawn towards personalized communication, and we're having to really up the bar and up the ante on how we communicate with our patients. So there was something that was really it was eye-opening for me. I recently had changed dentists, and when I went to the dentist, we had kind of a one-on-one conversation. He wanted to get to know me, and I talked to him about my daughter who's in gymnastics, and it was after the appointment, later in the evening. I had gone to the dentist that day, and I want to show you what that text message looks like. If you want to just advance over here, I got this text message that said, "I wanted to thank you for choosing me as your dentist. Great meeting you today. Good luck at your daughter's gymnastics meet tonight." Now that, to me, that was really eye-opening, because normally, when we get texts from our dentist in the past, it was a 5-digit short code. You never know where it came from. But my dentist, I had in my phone, and so I see that he took the time to really, personalize this communication to me. Now with Weave, you can actually have the team. This is a team effort, like you mentioned. This is a team effort where any sort of details about that patient, there's a spot on there where you can kind of put those notes in there. So when that patient comes back, and if they've just taken a trip to Tahiti, you're going to know when they come in, or you're going to be able to see in their notes that, hey, Mike had a trip to Tahiti, or his daughter is in gymnastics. It's these types of things that we want to feel like we matter. And when we do, that loyalty, increasing that patient loyalty, is going to be the biggest ROI in your practice to reduce the no-shows, to reduce the cancellations, and to make that patient feel like they belong in your practice and that they truly have a relationship with the dentist.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. This is a great, again, great follow-up, doing more than is expected, and building the relationship, and a great way to do it digitally. This is one of your, I think, stock messages for an appointment reminder.
So this is kind of the example that I wanted to show. This is what we're used to. We're used to having a message like this, which is, it comes from a 5-digit short code, and the patient really only had the option to reply C to confirm or something else. And the problem is for anyone who's using a system like this, the patient, if I get a text message from a 5-digit short code, Steve, I'll be honest with you, I don't even take the time to look at it, because I know that my wife has signed up for so many coupons with Bed Bath & Beyond and everything else. I just think it's spam. And on top of that, what you'll see here, and this is a message that kind of an example of a message which was okay to use 5 years ago, but in today's day and age, the wording has to be changed. The wording in all of these messages is very important. But then also, if the patient replies anything else in here, if they reply anything but a C to confirm, like if they say, sorry, I can't make it, traditionally, in a lot of these other patient communication systems, you're not going to know who responded, sorry, I can't make it. And in the patient's mind, they're thinking, all right, we're good, I canceled the appointment. So really, in today's day and age, and the requirements that that are really in place to have us maintain that communication and the loyalty with our patients is such that we, practices need a system that allows that two-way texting, that allows if a patient responds to anything else, the first thing that happens is that front office manager will see a little notification pop up. They'll be able to hop on and send a reply back. So it's true two-way texting to be able to work with that patient if for some reason there's a conflict that has come up for that appointment.
Much more personalized and enables you to communicate via text, which is a huge step forward instead of a stock kind of mass text message. So great
Absolutely.
suggestion. Thanks for that. Mike, why don't you talk about this real quick? Because I'm sure if anybody's not familiar with Weave, I just inserted this in terms of anybody is not familiar with it. If they'd like to get more familiar with it, tell us what they can do.
Yes, and again, there's a lot of, I really kind of sympathize with the practices out there because there's so many systems, there's so much technology, and it's really hard to know what should I be using in my practice? How do I stay up to date with all of the constantly changing trends in how people are communicating? If you are interested to see what Weave is and how it can benefit your practice and how it can help your practice, if you grab your cell phones and if you go to the text, if you open up your text app and type the keyword Weave and you text that to 797979. So again, the number that you text it to is 797979, and you just type the keyword Weave. You'll be able to put your information in there. We'll show you a brief demonstration, and then just for doing a demonstration and for your time, and again, like you said, Steve, time is everything. We're going to send you a $20 Amazon gift card for that.
Perfect. I think I can remember that number, by the way.
There you go.
Perfect. And I'll mention this again before we wrap up. All right, prevention. As we wrap up the prevention piece, let's talk about the financial flu patients. So these are patients that cancel at the last minute many times because of financial concerns. So the prevention here is to put together a financial arrangement system where you separate payment from the day of service. So if it's going to be anything, and you can choose a number, but for example, you might say anything above $500 for the treatment, then we're going to set up the financial arrangements and separate so that they do not owe anything when they come in for their treatment. So what I might say to you, Mike, let's say you're having several crowns done. For example, I might say, great, Mike, we're ready to move ahead. We're going to have it looks like the best day that'll work for your prep appointment is Wednesday at 2 o'clock. And to reserve that date and time, then we'll run $500 today. And then the balance of whatever it is, we'll run early next week before you come in. That way, when you come in, you don't have to worry about anything. You can just come in, we'll get the treatment done. And it's one less thing for you to have to worry about. And our patients love this because it makes it easy, and one less thing to have to remember. Does that make sense? So in other words, you're gonna separate it so that you do not have to worry about asking them for money. They don't have to be concerned when they get up the day of that they're going to have to pay. And if in the event something comes up and they change, you can always do a refund. But I'm preventing the financial flu here so that it's not one more reason to not show up. All right, two most powerful words for patient commitment. So when I get down to the end, here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, okay, Mike, we've got everything set and ready to go. We have you scheduled for your prep appointment for those two beautiful brand new crowns next Wednesday at 10 a.m. We'll have everything set up and ready to go, prepared for you for Wednesday at 10 a.m. Will you be here? And that's just a nice, friendly commitment question to just simply say, will you be here? And I wait for the patient to say yes. So we could spend several minutes here talking about the difference between a request and a commitment, but I'll leave it at this, which is, will you be here? is just a simple commitment question to help them make a verbal commitment to that date and that time. We get questions a lot. Should we confirm or not confirm our patient appointments? There's a couple of tips here. I would highly recommend that you eliminate the words confirm and remind from your written as well as your verbal vocabulary. They communicate the wrong message. If you're calling to confirm an appointment or you're messaging someone to confirm it, then the underlying message is it wasn't ever firm in the first place. It gives them wiggle room to say, oh, well, no, something else came up. So it's really an invitation to cancel. Same thing with remind. If you're calling to remind someone, then the underlying message is that you didn't expect them to remember. So we highly recommend that you eliminate those two words from your written as well as your spoken vocabulary. So if there's any messaging to go out at all, phone call, text message, then it should go something like this. Mike, this is Steve from Dr. Anderson's office. I'm calling, or I'm just touching base about your appointment with Dr. Anderson tomorrow at 2 o'clock or 10 o'clock. I wanted you to know that we are all ready for your appointment and we're looking forward to seeing you tomorrow at 10 a.m. We'll see you then. With the technology the way it is today, that is a very personalized message, whether you're doing a phone message, calling them, text message, or email. It is a statement of fact. We're not confirming, we're not reminding, it's just a statement of fact to let them know we're ready, we're expecting you. If you feel compelled to get a response by email or text or phone, then what we recommend is just to simply to say, could you please let us know that you've received this message, or reply with why that you received this message, but they're not replying to confirm their appointment. Okay, so that's just some ideas on things we know that work in terms of preventing and eliminating those words from your vocabulary. As we wrap up today, let's talk about first aid. So these are the things you can do in the heat of the moment after everything you've done to prevent the cancellation in the first place. Those now remaining exceptions when people call at the last minute to change or cancel their appointment. First off, which day of the week is the worst day for appointment changes? Which day of the week? And you know the answer to that question, it's Monday. Why Monday? Because all weekend long, while you're out of the office and your patients know that you're not there, they call and leave you love messages on your voicemail telling you that they're not going to be there at 8 a.m. on Monday morning. So here's how you prevent that is your after hours message. If you have voicemail or some kind of after hours message would say this: thanks for calling Dr. Anderson's office. If you're calling after hours and would like to schedule an appointment, please leave your name and phone number. We'll call you as soon as we return. And here's the big part. If you have a dental emergency or a conflict with your scheduled appointment, please page or call the doctor at this number. Our voicemail system is not monitored for scheduling changes. Thank you for calling. In other words, you're letting them know in a professional way that they can't cancel by voicemail. Now, doctors may be saying, oh, they're going to wear me out and people will be calling me all times of the day and night. Our experience has been that that is not true. They will either call the office when you get back or they will show up for their appointment. So the basic idea here is make it easy for people to do what they've committed to do and not so easy to do what they have, you can't let them weasel out of their appointment. So fine tune your after hours message. And again, we're training people how to treat us. If they call during office hours, here's the basic human instinctive reaction. What happens is when I call, if I'm a patient, and Mike, if you were the appointment coordinator, and I called and I said, Mike, this is Steve Anderson. Listen, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, but something's come up and I won't be able to make my appointment in an hour. Now, what we normally say because they say the I'm sorry thing and we feel sympathetic as we say, oh, Mike, that's okay. Well, no, it's not. So the recommendation here is you got to discipline yourself to just say, oh. You pause and you say, oh. You don't say okay, you just say, oh. And then you would say, Steve, would you hold on for just a minute while I get your records? Put them on hold, pull up their records, and then you get back on and just say, thanks for holding, Mrs. Jones or Mike or whoever it is. I have your chart, I have your record right here in front of me. Now we have you scheduled today at 10 a.m. with Dr. Anderson for the prep work on those 2 crowns, which we talked about you wanting to have done before your next high school reunion or whatever it is. In other words, the why. You put this in their chart. Why are they having this treatment done in the first place? Why is it important to them? That's why it's so important to get that early on. So I know how important this is to you. You're very important to us. Mrs. Jones, is there any way you can keep this appointment as originally scheduled? Any way at all? So you're just going to ask one more time. And what we found is just by placing that added level of importance on the appointment, then you'll save some of these potential cancellations. They'll say, well, if it's that big of a deal, I'll be there. I'll cancel this other thing. So ask again, make another attempt. You have nothing to lose by doing this. The more importance you place on that appointment time, the more they will. Now, if they say, no, I just can't come, then you would say, Mrs. Jones, let me see what I can do to find something that will work for all of us. Let me ask you this, which day and time do you have the most control over when you have the least likelihood of any type of an interruption in your schedule, so we can prevent this from happening again? Nice and friendly, but you're going to ask again, framing it that we expect you to keep your commitments. Now, third attempt, if they say, well, I don't know, I'll just have to call you back later, they're probably not canceling the appointment. They may be canceling the treatment. So as a third attempt, you might say, Mrs. Jones, I know how important this is to you and how important this is to us and the doctor. If you'd hold for just a moment, I know that Dr. Anderson would love to talk to you. Now, you might think that's bold, but my point is if you sense that they have changed their mind about the treatment, it's okay to get the doctor involved so we can have some common understanding of what's really going on. So those are some first aid tips. For frequent offenders, those that continually cancel or no-show, here's some suggested verbal skills. Mr. Jones, I need your help. For some reason, we have not been able to make these appointments work like we need to. I know how important your health and your dentistry is to you. And I look back and it looks like we've rescheduled this appointment at least 5 times. So what would you suggest we do to get this back on track? In other words, in just a nice, friendly way, call their attention to the back and forth and just ask for their help. How would you suggest we handle this? Some people are scheduling challenged, whether they have memory problems or a tight schedule. Some people do. So here is a suggestion. I picked this up from Ashley Waugh several years ago, who was a trainer with Toyota International. And she came to one of our dental seminars and she talked about her crazy schedule and she never knows where she's going to be almost one day to the next. And suggested, she, if you had a short list and called me the day of when you have an opening in your schedule, she said, I would probably be more likely to show up than if you try and schedule me in advance. So keep a short list for those who have hectic schedules, they're organizationally challenged, or have short-term memory problems. Would be a suggestion that you can call them the day of when you have availability in your schedule, and that's a great way to keep your schedule managed. We've gone through a lot of content in the last hour. Here are some resources that are available to you to take this to the next level. If you would like a copy of the specific verbal skills that we've talked about today, you are welcome to download the free ebook that is a part of this webinar entitled Stop Cancellations. It has all the verbal skills we've talked about today and more. You can get that by going to totalpatientservice.com/stop. And that ebook is available. It's a great way Great resource you can use to train your team and help everybody with the specific verbal skills that we've talked about today. So totalpatientservice.com/stop for the free ebook with the verbal skills and additional information on scheduling and cancellations. Mike mentioned the offer from Weave. You can text the word Weave to 797979 for a free demo of how the Weave system works and how you can communicate and build relationships with your patients over the phone and digitally. Thank you for that, Mike. And finally, if you would like a video copy, excuse me, copy of today's presentation in team meeting format, and you do not have access to crowncouncil.org, if you happen to be a friend or invitee today, you can email success@crowncouncil.com and request a video version, a recording of today's video. This video the webinar has been recorded. It will be posted on crowncouncil.org later today. We will also send all the participants of the webinar today an email following our webinar with all of these links, including the link and how you can get access to the recorded version. We highly recommend that you share that with your entire team. So 3 resources there: the recorded version of the webinar, your demo of Weave, if that is something that you have not done yet, and then finally the free ebook at totalpatientservice.com/stop. With that, let me just address just a couple of questions here. First off, for the name of the app, of course, is Weave, so I think we've addressed that. So you can get the Weave app. You just text it to 797979, and they will get you all the information. You can take a quick demo. Another question, Mike, is how much is your monthly fee? And I think that is dependent on how many phones you have, how big the office is. There's some variables there, if I'm correct. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So when we talk with the offices, we can kind of assess. It is all month to month. There is no contract involved in that. But packages start anywhere between $449 and $499 a month.
Perfect. So any questions on that? Text Mike again, 797979, and you can go through a quick demo. Thank you for your participation today. Mike, thanks for all of your great input today.
Thank you, sir.
The great wisdom you've added to take relationships to the new level by phone and digitally. Huge step up. The technology is amazing. Again, free ebook, totalpatientservice.com/stop. The demo from Weave, just text Weave to 797979. And for recording of today's webinar, you'll get an email with a link, or email us at success@crowncouncil.com. Thanks for being with us today. Stay tuned for more Crown Council webinars here in the near future. Have a super day.